Firebase, it's your boy OSAS, and in today's episode, we are going to continue with our chat reaction functionality. In the last episode, we got started with the part 1 of our message reaction, and really, in today's episode, we're going to continue with the part 2 by adding this reaction picker view components and this custom context menu at the bottom of our chat message. So as a quick recap to what we did in the last episode, this is the current state of our project right now. When we actually select a specific chat message, all we're doing is we're taking a screenshot of that message, we're animating it to the center of our screen inside of a view that we're calling a focused view, and then we're showing this blur view that creates this sort of focused effect. And when we tap on the blur view, we animate everything back to the initial position and we remove everything else from our view. So that's the gist of what's really going on. In today's episode, we are going to continue by animating out this reaction picker view and building out this custom context menu as well. So let us go right ahead and jump into Xcode and continue with our animation. So right now I'm inside of our message list controller. I'm going to go right ahead and create a new SwiftUI view for our reaction picker view. And I'm just going to go to our screens and I'm going to go to the chat folder and let us go right ahead and create a new view and let's call it reaction picker view. And let's make sure it's a SwiftUI view. And so we're going to say reaction picker view. And I'm going to jump out of Xcode really quickly for a second here just to show you what I'm trying to do. So this is our reaction picker view, right? This top guy right here that allows us to be able to react to a message. And if you look at it, it seems pretty simple. It's just an H stack and with what looks like a bunch of text, right, representing an emoji. And so we're going to go right ahead and build that. And the first thing I want us to do is to actually get out the data model that is going to be powering each one of this individual emoji symbol. And so for us to do that, let us jump into our message items. So we have this message item plus types. I'm going to open up that file again, and I want us to actually create an emoji that is going to be handling an emoji enum for each of our emojis. So this is the list of emojis that we have right now. I just pasted it. And as you can see, we have the thumbs up, we have the heart, we have the laugh, and all of the other emojis. So I want us to convert these strings into some sort of an enum for us to actually be able to represent them. So I'm going to go right ahead and just say enum. I'm going to expand Xcode all of the way, and I'm going to say enum, and let's just call it reaction. This is going to be an integer. I think that's okay. And let's see, we have case like, we have case heart, we have case, what's a good one, laugh, case shocked, and then we have case sad, and we have case pray, and I think the last one I'm just going to say more. Okay, so each one of these, they're going to have an emoji, and I'm just going to go right ahead and just say reaction. So I'm going to say var emoji. I'm going to create it as a computer property. It's going to be a string, and I'm going to switch on self. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and assign it to each one of this individual emoji. So like is going to return the like emoji, art is going to return the art emoji, and let's see, laugh is going to return this laugh emoji, and I think shocked, yep, shocked emoji, and we have this cry or sad emoji. I think it's sad, return sad emoji, and we're going to put the pray right there, return the pray emoji, and the more, we're just going to return the plus icon. And so now with this reaction emoji or this reaction enum, let us go and use this to actually power our reaction picker view. As you can see in the completed version of our project, it's just an H stack. So let's go right ahead and actually create an H stack to represent this bad boy. And I'm going to jump back. I'm going to actually leave our Xcode in this current state so we can see what we're working with. And let us see. Actually, let me expand Xcode all the way. I lied. Let's create an H stack. And what do we want? So let's make an H stack. Let's give it a spacing of 10 in between our items. And all that we want is we want to create some sort of an array. But before we do that, all we're really looking for is just going to be a text. So I'm just going to say text. And let's see, for example, I'm going to create an emoji. Let me just put a plus emoji there, a plus string. And the font is going to be, let's say font. I'm going to do system size 30. And we need a background color. But before we even do that, let us have a preview to show what we are working with. So while we wait for our SwiftUI preview to load up, this is just going to be a text component. In each one of those reactions, we're going to load that into our text, value. And all I'm going to do next now is we're going to animate out each one of these components. So this is what the plus icon looks like for now. And as you can see in the completed version of the project, we have this background, right? Actually, the plus has a background. And let's go right ahead and continue. I'm going to continue. And what do we want to do? So we need some sort of an array inside of our H stack right now. Right now, we're just passing in this text. So I'm actually going to create another struct, another data model, actually, that's going to be responsible for handling our reaction picker view text. And here is why. So in the completed version of our project, as you can see on the simulator, when we actually long press And when we're done animating our selected message to the center of the screen, right, as you notice, the reaction picker view animates out. We're actually going to be using a SwiftUI animation for that, as you can tell, because we're inside of a SwiftUI component right now in the reaction picker view. And we need some sort of a data model that lets us know when to animate each one of these individual elements. Again, if I long press, notice each one of the individual elements actually animates. It scales and it looks like it's bouncy, right? And so let's go right ahead and create a struct that's going to represent that for us. So I'm just going to call it emoji reaction. And emoji reaction is going to have reaction, which is going to be of type reaction. And I'm also going to have a animating, is animating, and it's going to be a Boolean. I'm just going to default this to false. And what else? I also want to have an opacity because I'm going to be hiding and showing this based on the opacity. Okay, because as you can tell, again, in the completed version of the project, when we long press on it, all of the individual emojis are actually not going to show. At first, we're going to first animate this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one. So we're going to basically change the opacity and scale each one of the individual elements. So for us to do that, that's why we're really trying to create this emoji reaction for. So now with that being done, let's go ahead and actually create an array that's going to power this, but this is going to be a state object. A state. So I'm going to say state, private var, and I'm just going to call it emoji states. And it's just going to be an array of our emoji reactions. And it's just going to be an array. I'm going to create a spacing between my body objects. And really all I want to do now is I want an emoji for each one of our, I want an emoji struct for each one of our actual emojis. So we have a reaction. This is going to be the like. And I'm just going to copy and paste this a bunch of times because I already know what we're going to do. So we have like, we have heart, we have, let's see, what's the other one? Laugh. We have, what's the other one? I think it's shocked. And what's the other one? We have sad. And then we have pray. And then we have the more option. Okay, so let's go ahead and use this state emoji, this emoji states to actually power our H stack. So I'm going to go ahead and create a for each right here. And this for each is going to be using our emoji states, of course, but I'm going to use the emoji states.enumerated. And the reason I'm using the enumerated instead of just directly using the emoji states is because I actually want to have access to the index of our emoji. Because remember, again, in the completed version of the project, I'm actually animating each individual emoji when it appears. And so for us to do that, we need to know the position, the index of that specific emoji item. And so that's why I'm using the enumerated here. And so for the ID, I'm just going to use the offsets. So we can access that using offsets, if I remember how to spell. And now inside of here, it's going to return for us an index and an emoji. I'm just going to call it an emoji reaction. I think that's a good one. Okay, so let's move our text from here into our for each. So we just did that. Let's wait for everything to boot up. Let's wait for SwiftUI preview to do its thing. This is yellow to us. It's saying emoji states for each requires that emoji reaction conforms to, yes, it does. Hold on, guys. So yeah, we have our emoji. Yeah. Why would it not work? Oh, okay. Let me convert this to an array. That's why. Okay, so I'm going to go right ahead and wrap the actual emoji enumeration into an array. So I just want to convert it to an array. So that's perfect. So now we have all of our elements. Let's now use this emoji reaction to actually bind it to the text component. So I'm going to say emoji reaction dot emoji. That name kind of sounds lame, so I would like to change that. I'm just going to change this to item. So I'm going to say item.reaction.emoji. I think that's better. Okay, awesome. So we have each one of our individual emojis now. If we go out of our Xcode and we jump back to our completed version, as you can see, we actually have a beautiful background that is this white background right here. But one thing I want you to pay attention to is when we animate it out, you actually notice we're animating out our background components as well. The background for the reaction picker view. Check this out. Notice how it's very subtle, right? So we need a way to know when the reaction picker view is showing. We need some sort of a state variable. So that way we can animate each one of our individual emoji item in our background components, our background, which is going to be this white background. So let's go right ahead and actually do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a state object right up here. Not a state object. I keep saying state object, but I just mean a state variable. I'm just going to create another state variable, and I'm going to call it animate background view. I think that's a good one. Or we probably should just call it something like onAppear, but I think animate background view is a good one. So the animate background view, when do we want to trigger this to false? Well, we just want to trigger it to false when the actual, when the actual H stack appears, when our actual reaction picker view appears. So when it appears, I'm just going to toggle it to true. I'm just going to say animate background view is equals to true. But because I want things to animate, I'm going to wrap it inside of an animation block. So I'm going to say animation, and I'm going to use the ease in, and I want a duration. So passing the duration parameter, and it's just going to be 0.2. And I want to toggle the animate background view property to true. So where are we going to use this animate background view? Well, let's go right ahead and actually create a background for our, for our reaction picker view. So right here, I'm going to scroll right here, and I'm going to create another function that's going to represent the background view. and I'm just going to say background view. As you already know, it's going to be of some view. And what is the view? It's just going to be a capsule, actually. As you can see in the completed version of our project, we have this capsule right here, and maybe I should just Command Shift, and let me see if I could just screenshot this so we can have what we're working with us all the time. So I'm going to move this down here. Just going to drag this down here so I see what we're working with. So as you can see, this is just a capsule. That looks pretty simple enough. And what do we want to do? So all we want to do is capsule. Let us fill it, okay? And the fill we're going to be using is color.context menu tint. There is a color inside of our assets catalog known as context menu. And if I scroll right here, as you can see, it's dynamic. So it's going to respond to light mode and dark mode, which is exactly what we want. Let's jump back to our reaction picker view component. So, okay, we have our reaction picker view component, and I want to go back here, not the pinned one. So a reaction picker view component, it's capsule. Let's add a mask to it, okay? And the mask is also going to be a capsule, but this capsule is also going to use the same fill color. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and paste it here. And this time around, I'm going to add a scale effect. So this is where our animate background view property is going to come into play. Okay, so we want to animate it, we want to scale it, and we also want to animate the opacity. So I'm going to say the opacity. Okay, so how do we want to animate it? Well, all I want to do is I'm going to say if animate background view, if that is equals to true, the scale is going to be 1, else it's going to be 0. And I'm going to use an anchor position here. And so for the anchor, I would like to create some sort of a message. So I'm going to jump into my message item and actually create a computer property for this anchor position. So I'm going to Command Shift and O as usual, and I'm just going to jump into message item. And inside of my message item, right below my right below my is sent by, I'm going to create another one. I'm just going to call it message anchor or menu anchor. That's the word I'm looking for. Menu anchor. And I'm going to explain what menu anchor is in just a second. So it's going to be of type unit points. I believe that's what we want. So I'm going to save the direction. If it's a message that we are receiving, I want it to be leading, else I want it to be trailing. Okay, so here's what's going on. Here's the anchor point. So in the completed version of our project, when I drag this all the way up here, so this is a message, for example, that we sent, right? This grievous image, that's a message that's coming from the currently logged in user. When we long press on it, notice how it is actually anchored to the trailing, right? Notice how it's actually anchored to the trailing, right? So for example, the reaction picker view is anchored to the trailing. The custom context menu is also anchored to the trailing. Check this out, right? This is dope. For the message that we're actually receiving that's not sent by us, when we long press on it, notice how it's actually anchored to the lead-in. The reaction picker view is anchored to the lead-in, and the custom context menu is also anchored to the lead-in. So that's what we're going to be using this menu anchor for. Guys, I really like doing things like this. Just, dope attention to details like that is what helps your application stand out. So for example, when we long press on it, look at how it animates from the left to the right when the message is something that we received. While when we long press on the message that we sent, it animates from the right to the left, and for here, it animates from left to right. So that's going to be awesome. Let's jump back to Xcode and let's continue with our business. So we have our menu anchor now, which is a computer property. Where are we going to use that menu anchor? Well, we just got to jump back to our reaction picker view and actually use it right here inside of our scale effect, because that's what's causing that scale. Because again, look at this. That's what's causing that scale to be anchored like that. One of the reasons. Okay, so now I'm just going to say message. We need to pass in a message now into our reaction picker view. So let me expand Xcode all the way actually. And I'm going to scroll all the way up here to our reaction picker view, and I'm going to ask for a message item. So I'm going to say message, and it's just going to be of type message item, right? Because we need to know which specific message we're actually trying to react to. So I'm going to remove some spacing, and now I'm going to say, let's fix our SwiftUI preview. We're just going to use a placeholder. Let's use the received placeholder. And for the anchor, now we're just going to say message dot menu anchor, okay? And for the opacity, how do we want to animate it? Well, we're just going to say if animate background view is true, well, the opacity is going to be visible. It's going to be 1, else it's going to be 0. So now let's take this background, view, and let's go back to our body and add it. So right here inside of our, for our entire H stack, we want to add a background modifier, and we're just going to pass in our background view function that we just created. So let's go right here and let us use the SwiftUI preview instead. And as you can see, it's not really showing that much of a difference. So I would like for us to add some style into our SwiftUI preview so we can see what we're working with. All I'm going to do is just create a Z stack really quickly. And let's see, I'm just going to add a rectangle to that Z stack, and I'm going to add a fill material of the thin material, just to sort of mimic the blur view that we have in the message list controller. So look at that. Okay, I think that looks much, much better. So let's scroll all the way back up. And as you can see now, and I'm going to drag this all the way to the bottom just so you guys can see what I'm talking about. As you can see, we have this beautiful background, this white background now, but we need to add some spacing because everything is just so tight right here. So I'm just going to say the padding, and let's give it a padding horizontal. And what's a good horizontal value? Something like 15. And let's give it another padding of vertical, but I don't want the vertical to be too much, just something like 10. And that looks so much better, guys. Look at that. That looks so much better. And again, we're going to come to this plus icon. We're going to try to match it to look exactly like what we have here. But let's take it one step at a time. Okay, so we have our beautiful background view. which is great, right? The next thing I want us to actually do now is to start adding, also let's add some shadow before I actually jump ahead. So after the background, let's add a nice shadow to it, right? And the reason is because if you can take a look in the completed version of our project, we have this beautiful shadow inside of this capsule, outside of the capsule. So I'm gonna go ahead and drag this to the bottom just to create some spacing. And I'm going to say shadow, and the shadow that we want, let's see, color is going to be something like color.gray with an opacity of 0.2, and then the radius is going to be 4. We need to add an XY, or let's just leave those as 0, honestly. I think that looks pretty good. Or maybe we should add it. X is 0, Y is 0. Not minus 0, 0. Okay, that looks so much more better. It's very subtle, but it's there, which is perfect, right? I can zoom this in a little bit just so you guys can see what I mean. Yeah, that looks very good. So now it looks like this nice floating panel, which is exactly what we have in mind. So let's go back to the completed version of the project again, see what we're dealing with. And let's go right ahead and actually style this plus button really quickly. And after that, then we're going to animate out our reaction picker view. So to style our plus button, all I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm actually just going to create another, go ahead and create another function for our actual reaction item. So I'm just going to say reaction button. And the reason I'm separating it out of this for each is because this reaction button is going to have a lot of stuff. It's going to have a lot of interesting animations. So just for readability's sake, let's do that. And it's going to take in an emoji reaction, and it's also going to take in an index, which is going to be an integer, and it's going to return us some view, which is just going to be, a text component really. But let's go ahead and create a button because we want each one of our individual emoji to be selectable, right? We want to be able to tap each one of these bad boys and fire something that actually reacts to a message in the back end. So for the label, what do we want? And I think for the label, I'm also going to go ahead and create another private function for that. I'm just going to call it button body. It's going to return some view as well. And what does button body take in? Well, it's going to take in the specific item that you're referring to, and it's just going to be an emoji reaction. Let's also take in an index, which is going to be an integer. So for this, we're going to say if the reaction, essentially if it's more, I want to use a different style. So if item.reaction is equals to more, which is just meaning if it's this plus icon, I want to style it to look like this circular plus icon that we have here. That's all I'm trying to do here. Else, if it's not the plus icon, I'm just going to use the regular text component that we have up here. So I'm going to move that honestly, throw that in here. And let's see, what do we want to do? So if it's a more, actually, we need to mark this as a view builder as well because it's dynamic. And then let's pass in our button body right here, pass in the item that we're getting, pass in the index that we're getting. Let's also go ahead and call our reaction button inside of our body. So I'm going to say reaction button. The item is just going to be the item, and the index is going to be the index. So everybody's happy. Okay, let's scroll back up here. And for now, let's handle our more button. So for the more button, all we want to do is just say, as you can see, it looks like it's an image. It's a system image. It's not a regular text. So I'm just going to say system name, and I'm going to use the plus system image. And let's style this bad boy a little bit. Let's make it bold. Let's give it some nice breathing space, some nice pattern, something like 8. That looks beautiful. What else do we want to add? Let's add a background. Something like color system gray 5. Okay, let's go ahead and add a clip shape of circle. Let's give it a foreground style of gray. And let's see what's going on. Okay, that looks very beautiful. I think that's really what we have in mind, to be honest, guys. I think that matches our design. And I'm going to go ahead and actually style our reaction button now. But reaction button is already styled. All we want to add next is to actually animate it. So again, I'm going to exit out of Xcode really quickly and show you what I'm doing. And so I'm going to go ahead and remove this because we no longer need this for now, at least. I'm going to remove that bad boy. And so in the completed version of our project, again, when we long press, what's really going on? There's actually two things going on. There's scale effect and then there's opacity. So when we long press on this bad boy, we're scaling each one of our individual emoji button, right? And we're showing them simultaneously. And the way we're doing that is just using this properties that we have inside of our emoji reaction. That's how we're going to make that happen. And so for us to do that, let's go right ahead and actually add some modifiers to this reaction button that's going to hide and show our reaction emoji. All right, so we're going to add a scale effect. And the scale effect is going to be conditional, of course. And all we're going to say is we're going to say emoji states, right, which is our array of emojis right here. And remember, the emoji reaction, and they contain these properties. We're going to say these emoji states, we're going to access it using the index that we're actually passing into our reaction button. So I'm going to say emoji state index, and I want to get the animating property. So I'm going to say it's animating. If that is true, I'm going to make it 1. Else, I'm just going to make it 0.01. I think that's a pretty good one. And then let's do the same thing for opacity. And so for the opacity, we're just going to say item.opacity. Okay. Look at that. As you can see, it starts off as that. Let me refresh my SwiftUI preview again. Beautiful. Okay, we're not done. The next thing I want us to do is actually add an onAppear to each one of this individual reaction. So inside of the onAppear block, what do we want to do? Well, essentially, we want to change the animating property of our individual emoji to true. So I'm going to go right ahead and just add a, let's see, I want to have something like with animation. I want to add an animation block. And all I want to do is I want to say something like emoji states for that specific emoji, accessing it using the index. I want to change the is animating property to true. Let's see what happens. Look at that. Let's refresh. Look at that. Obviously, that's not the animation style that we want. If I jump into the completed version of the project, we have a more bouncier animation, right? We have something that's actually a spring animation. That's the word. And so let's go ahead and apply a spring animation to our animation block. So I already know the spring animation is going to be a little bit beefy. So I'm going to go ahead and actually create a computer property for that bad boy, just for readability's sake. So I'm going to create a privately computer property, and I'm going to call it spring animation. And our spring animation is going to be of animation type. And I'm just going to say animation dot spring. Okay, I'm going to open up this bad boys and start adding a bunch of parameters into our spring animations. For the response, and let's see, I want the response to be 0.55. I've experimented with this animation values, by the way. You guys can feel free to play with it, but this seems to be like a very sweet spot for the effect that we're going for. And I'm going to do a dampen fraction. So for the dampen fraction, we're going to do 0.6. And then for blend duration, we're going to do something like 0.05. And let's see. Then I'm going to take the spring animation and jump back to this animation block. So with the animation modifier, I'm actually going to add the spring animation. I'm going to say spring animation, and let's see what happens. Let's refresh our SwiftUI preview. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, it's bouncy, but you would notice something, right? They all animate at the same time, and that's not really what we want. In the completed version of our project, each one waits for basically, you animate the first one, but you don't animate the second one until the first one is done animating. And that's what's going on. We animate the first one, and then the second one, and then the third one. So it's basically sequential. There's some sort of a delay going on in that animation logic. So how do we add a delay to this bad boy? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. So right here, where we're saying spring animation, we're going to throw a delay to this bad boy. So I'm just going to say dot delay. And what do we want the delay to be? Well, the delay is going to have to be some sort of a, let's think for a second here, guys. So the delay is going to have to be some sort of a dynamic delay. But for now, let's just say 0.05. Really what I want to do is I want the delay, I want to add an index. I want to add a delay to the index. So all I'm going to say is I'm going to say index times 0.05. So let's wait for our SwiftUI preview. It's going to yell at us, and we need to wrap it inside of a double. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's ask for Xcode to fix that for us. And look at that. Let's refresh our SwiftUI preview again. Look at that. And so really what I'm trying to do is I'm just taking the index of each one of these individual elements, and then I'm multiplying it by 0.05. So if it's at index 0, it's going to be 0 times 0.05. And then, of course, you can walk all the way to like index 5 or index 6, whatever, the number of reactions that you have is. And so that's what's creating that nice delay. But we're also not done. I would like to speed this up a little bit. This right now doesn't really match the completed version that I had in mind. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a speed modifier to this bad boy, to this animation, the spring animation here. I'm going to just spring it up by 4. Look at that. That looks so much better. It looks much, much faster, much, much springier. But that's not just everything that I want. I would also like to add a delay to when it actually appears, because in the completed version of the project, we don't actually start animating our reaction picker view until we are done animating our screenshot to the center of the screen. So notice what I mean. When I long press, look at that, right? It's almost like we sync it. We're syncing the animation so that the reaction picker view begins its own animation the minute this selected message gets to the center of the screen, right? And so let's go ahead and do that. And the way we're going to do that is we're just going to add, it feels like a little bit of a hack, but it's going to work. And we're just going to add a delay. We're going to wrap this bad boy inside of a delay, inside of a dispatch queue. So we're going to say dispatch queue main, and let's just add an async after. It's going to ask for when. We're going to say now plus, let's say something like 0.2, just a very subtle delay. And inside of that bad boy, that's when we're actually going to paste our animation block. Okay, so let's reverse. Let's try that again. That looks beautiful. That looks so nice and springy, guys. Look at that. Beautiful. That's exactly what we want. Okay, so the next thing I would like for us to do is, let's see. I would like for us to take this bad boy and, of course, plug it into the completed version of our project, into our message list controller. But before we do that, here's a subtle detail that I added to the completed version of the project that I would like for us to do really quickly. So if you notice in the completed version of the project, like I showed earlier, there's actually different anchor points and different animation directions based on who sends the message. So if it's a message that's sent by me, look at that. We start animating from the left, and then we go to the, well, we start animating from the right, and then we go to the left, right? So the pray icon or the plus icon animates first, and the thumbs up icon or the thumbs up emoji animates last. While if it's a message that's not sent by us, it's a message that's sent to us, an incoming message, we do the inverse. So the like button, the like emoji animates first, and then the, the plus emoji animates last. So for us to do like this, like dynamic index, because that's really what that is, right? It's the index that's causing the delay, right? For us to do this dynamic index, we need to create some sort of a logic that's going to help us do that. And again, you don't have to do this. This is just something that I had it. I like to like flush out animation that like, it's still subtle little details in my opinion that makes an application look very beautiful. So let's go right ahead and create a logic. I'm just going to say get animation index. And this get animation index is going to take in the index and integer, and it's going to return a new index, which is int as well. So int. Okay, what is this get animation index going to do? Like I said, it's just going to invert. It's going to invert the index based on the message direction. So I'm going to say if message direction, let's see, if message direction is equals to sent, meaning if this message is from us, well, we're just going to return, let's see, what's a good one? Let me just create a reversed index. I'm going to say let reversed index is equals to emoji states dot count -1 minus index, right? And we're going to return this reversed index. Else, if it's a message that is basically sent to us, right, that's an incoming message that we're receiving, we're just going to return the index because that remains the same. And really, again, all that this is doing is when the message is from us, for example, this, this photo message, right, we're actually inverting the index. While when the message is sent to us, let me refresh our SwiftUI preview really quickly. Notice it's already doing what we want when the message is sent to us. It's starting with this like button and animates into the plus button. Notice that in the completed version of the project, starts from the like and animates to the pray. So that's all we're doing here. We're just reversing the index logic. And so now we're going to use this dynamic index to actually animate our spring delay instead of using the actual index of the reaction. So I'm going to go inside of this on up here. And I'm just going to say dynamic index. And what is that dynamic index going to be? So we're just going to say get animation index, pass in the actual index. And now let's use that dynamic index right here. And let's see what happens. So right now, of course, it's going to show the same thing because, again, let me refresh our SwiftUI preview. It's going to show the same thing because this is a received message. And remember, received message starts from the left and goes to the right, while sent message starts from the right and goes to the left. So let's try sent message. I'm going to say sent message, sent placeholder. Interesting. That's not really doing what I want. Okay, let's see. Let me jump into the sent placeholder. Is that... Or we probably can't even determine if a message is sent by us. We're going to see it in the completed version of the project. Because if I remember, the sense logic is using the currently logged in user. And we don't have access to the currently logged in user when we're in preview mode. So anyways, we're going to make sure this works when we actually plug it in. So I think this is pretty much our animation logic for our reaction picker view. And I'm going to just jump right into our context menu components and build that out. And then we're going to add both of these components to our actual message, our reaction, our message list controller, like we see here. So what I want to do next is I would like for us to build this context, custom context menu. That's the word. And because we're not actually using the default Apple context menu here, we're creating our own. And it's pretty simple. Let's just go ahead and create a new SwiftUI file. And let's go ahead and call it, again, SwiftUI file. Let's go ahead and call it something like message menu view. Message menu view. And message menu view is going to be what? And let's go ahead and go back to the completed version of the project. I'm going to take a screenshot just so I can see what we are working with. And it looks like just an H-stack. I'm going to open this like that. I'm just going to jump into Xcode in full screen mode. And I'm going to drag this down here so I see what we're working on. And so as you can see, let me jump to this. As you can see, it looks like a V-stack, and it has like some sort of a H-stack inside of that V-stack. So the parent component is going to be a V-stack. Pretty simple. Okay, so we have a V-stack, and then we need some sort of a enum to represent each one of these individual elements or all the possible cases. So I'm just going to go ahead and create an enum right here. I'm just going to create it inside of this file, but really we should do it. Actually, let's do it inside of our message item plus types. And so above the reaction, I'm going to create a new enum, and I'm going to call it context menu action. And it's going to be a string, string. It's going to be a string. It's going to be case iteratable because we want to use it as an array. And it's going to be identifiable because we want to use it inside of a list. So we have case reply, we have forward, we have copy. What else do we have? And then we have delete. That's all we're doing for now. So for the ID, we're going to create a computed property for the ID. And we're just going to say string, and we're just going to return the raw value because remember, this enum is a string. So we could just return the raw value as the ID, and that will satisfy the identifiable contract. And so for the system image, because each one of these bad boys have a system image, let's just go ahead and create that. I'm just going to say system image is going to be of type string. And I'm just going to switch on self as usual, self. Let Xcode do his job. And for reply, I'm going to return arrow, shape, dot turn, dot up, dot left. And again, you can validate this by Command Shift and L and arrow. Actually, let me just copy this and show you what I mean. Command Shift and L, This is from symbol from SF symbol. So I'm not making it up. It's an actual SF symbol. And let's do the same thing for forward. And the forward, we're just going to use the paper plane SF symbol, paper plane. And for copy, we're going to use the doc.on.doc. And for delete, let's just go ahead and use the trash. Okay, so now we're going to use this context menu action to power our message menu view. So let's jump back to our message menu view. And like I said, it's a VStack. Let's align the VStack to begin with. And I'm going to jump to this because actually I'm going to unpin this really quickly, the SwiftUI preview. Okay, so let's go back. So inside of our VStack, let's make the alignment lead in. So I'm going to say alignment is that lead in. And let's give it a spacing, very small spacing, something like 1 between each item. And then let's create it for each inside of our VStack. And it's just going to be our menu. What do we call it again? Context menu action. We probably should have called it something like message menu action. Let's jump back and actually rename it. Let's call it message menu action. I think that's a better naming convention. Let's jump back here. We're just going to say message menu action all cases because it's case irreadable. And then the action is going to come inside of our for each. And let's go ahead and actually create a button that represents each one of these elements. So the first thing that we want to do for the button, I'm just going to create a private function as always. I'm just going to call it button body, and it's just going to return some view. And let's see, it's going to take in an action, some view that needs to be capitalized. It's going to take in an action, and the action is just going to be our message action, message menu action. And I'm going to pass in a button body up here and pass in the action. And let's actually go ahead and create our button body. So what is our project? I mean, what is each of our individual item? As you can see, it's actually just an H stack, but I'm going to create a button so it's tappable. And the label of the button is just going to be an H stack. And so I'm going to say H stack. And as you can see, we have a text, right? We have a text, and then we have a button, or we have an image. So I'm going to say text, and the text is just going to be our action dot raw value. And I'm going to make it capitalized. And the reason I'm making it capitalized is because I want the first word to be capitalized. So that's what that does. So we have our reply, we have a forward, copy, and delete. All right, let's go ahead and add more style into this baby. And so let's create a spacer, okay? And let's create an image, and let's make it a system name. And we're going to use our action.system image, because remember we created this computer property just now, right here, right? If we jump back to our message menu view, we have this beautiful looking ugly components, but we're going to fix it. Really what's going on is it's spanning the entire, screen, and we don't really want that. And the reason is because of the spacer, but let's throw a quick pattern really quickly in between each of this item. So we have a more breathing room. That looks better. All right. So we want a fixed width to give it the styling that we want. Okay. And I'm just going to do that pretty quickly by, let's see, what do I want to do? So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to first add an individual height to each of these buttons. So I'm going to say frame, and the height is going to be 45. I think that's a good height. And I'm also going to give it a max width inside of here. And the max width is going to be .infinity. And let's give it an alignment of leading. And let's see, that looks pretty good. Okay, so let us actually clip the entire VStack's height. Well, not, is it the height that we want to clip? Let's think here for a second. It's actually the width that we want to clip. So let's see, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say .frame. And the width, it's not going to be max width. I'm actually just going to use message. So we're going to need a message. So I'm going to pass in a message item here. Let message is going to be of type message item. And I'm just going to pass in our message dot image width. Remember the image width is actually, let me jump into our message item. The image width is actually 1.5 or about a quarter of the screen. I think that's exactly what we want. So let's see what that looks like. SwiftUI preview is going to yell at us. Let us fix that. And let us put something like, sense placeholder. I'm also going to remove the screenshot because we have everything we need. We have to remember to change this delete button to red, but we're going to do that really quickly. Let's see what this looks like. That looks good. Okay, let me comment this out really quickly and put a background color just so we see what's going on. Background, I'm just going to make it color the red just for better contrast. Okay, so if we apply our frame of image width, that looks perfect. And again, the image width is just about 1.5 of our screen width. 1.5. So almost half, but not quite. And that comes out to look very good, in my opinion. So the next thing I want us to do is to, of course, add a background, but it's not going to be color red. It's actually going to be thin material, something thin. And if we jump to the completed version of the project, you see what I mean. He has this nice thin material, or this thin sheet. Okay, so the next thing I would like for us to do is to add a clip shape. So clip shape, you already know, rounded rectangle with a corner radius of 16 and a style of continuous. 16, style of continuous. That looks beautiful, guys. And what else do we want to do? I think that looks pretty good. So the next thing we want to do is actually just animate. Oh yeah, we want to change this delete button, and we want to have the divider between each individual element. So I'm just going to go right ahead and add a divider after our frame. So we have a this divider component, built-in SwiftUI components, and that gives it that nice look. But also the divider is appearing in the last item, and we know we don't want that. So I'm going to add a conditional logic here. I'm going to say if action is not equals to delete, then add a divider. If not, don't add a divider to the last item. And that looks beautiful. And as you can see, we have our custom context menu, which is honestly not bad at all. It looks pretty nice, in my opinion. So let's add a foreground style to our actual button body. So I'm going to say foreground style. Let's see, foreground style. And what do I want it to be? I'm going to say if action is equals to delete, delete, okay, it's going to be red. Else, it's going to be WhatsApp black. And remember, WhatsApp black is a dynamic color that we have in our asset catalog. And that looks beautiful, guys. That looks beautiful. All right. The last bit of our equation is to actually animate our message menu view. Because again, remember, this is the SwiftUI animation version of our custom interactive animation. So this is animated by UIKit, but these two are actually animated using SwiftUI animations. And let us look at what's going on. When we long press, it's kind of like our reaction picker view. It scales out, right? And it also does the same thing. It scales out and it's anchored depending on the message owner. So that's perfect. And that's pretty easy, honestly. And it's not going to be as difficult as the reaction picker view, because for that one, we have to animate each individual reaction. And so what do we want to do really quickly for us to wrap up? So after our clip shape, I would actually like for us to quickly add, let's see, we have our clip shape. I would like for us to add some shadow, but I'm just going to say shadow. And actually, I'm just going to go copy the shadow from reaction picker view because ain't nobody got time to really type in the same code. I'm going to paste it here, and that's the same shadow that we want. And this is yelling at us. I'm not sure why. Should not. Let's refresh our SwiftUI preview. Make sure everything is good. Okay, perfect. That looks good, guys. That looks pretty good to me. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So now I want us to animate it out when it actually appears on up here. I want us to like animate this, message menu view. And the way we're going to do it is just kind of like the reaction picker view as well. I'm going to go again back into the reaction picker view, and I'm going to copy this animate background, animate this background view, jump back into our message menu view, paste that bad boy right here, and I'm going to create a background or a scale effect on the entire V stack, right? And so let's do it before the shadow. And I'm just going to say scale effect. We know we need the scale effect, and we know that we need an opacity because we're using the same sort of logic like we did with the reaction picker view. So for the scale effect, all we want to do is say animate background view, animate background view. Yeah, it's right here. Animate background view. If that is true, we are going to make it 1, else it's 0. And the anchor position. So this also comes with anchor, the scale effect, anchor. Yeah, I should have an anchor parameter. Anyways, we're going to say it's going to be our message dot, what did we call it? Menu anchor, okay? And then for the opacity, we're just going to go ahead and say, if the animates background option is true, which is 1, else it's 0. Okay, let's go ahead and see what that looks like. Of course, it's not going to show anything right now because remember the animate background view upon, the initial value is false. So everything is hidden. Are we going to show it? Well, we're just going to attach an unappear block right here and toggle our animate background view to true. So I'm going to go back into our reaction picker view, copy the exact same logic that we were using right here, and go back to our message menu view, paste that in our unappear. Let's see what that looks like. Look at that. Let's refresh. That's nice. That is honestly nice, guys. That looks so beautiful, guys. And I think that's really the bulk of what we want for this message menu view. And so I think that's going to be it for this episode, guys, because I know it's getting a little bit longer than I wanted to. In the next episode, we are actually going to orchestrate everything together. We're going to combine them together. So we're going to take this reaction picker view and its animation that we just built. We're going to add it on top of our message. And we're going to take this message menu view that we've built, and we're going to add it below our message. And we're going to, make sure all this animation syncs nicely together to give us this nice, beautiful effect that we have in the completed version of the project. I hope you guys are having fun. Please like and subscribe as always. It's your boy, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.